Alright, now what's going on? Thank you for coming to my channel. My name is Wally, and you are now tuned into Playboy Hustlers TV.
This the king of melodies beat.
Guess who I got back on the platform today? Yes, the truth teller himself, the one who's scared of no one and tell it like a T-H-I is. You hear me? Now look at this. Alright. Thomas Sowell on the current black culture, alright? So let's dive into this. You know, he be telling us things that we were never aware of, that sometimes you just gotta critically think and it'll make perfect sense to you. Because as you know, many of us have been indoctrinated, fooled, tricked, and lied to. You understand? Definitely manipulated, alright? So it's time we break out of that and start thinking on our own. You understand what I mean? Stop thinking with the popular crowd. Sometimes that's like the sheep going right into the slaughterhouse, alright? So let's go ahead and see what he's talking about. I had 2 previous videos of his, and I'm learning a lot with history. Hey, it's too bad school didn't even teach me none of this. If you agree, put it in the comments. And don't forget what other video I should do from him, alright? Make sure you put it in the comments, flood it, flood it, flood it. I'm gonna stop wasting your time. Let's go ahead and press play.
When I grew up in Harlem in the 40s and 50s, I never heard a gunshot.
And that's crazy because I grew up in Harlem way after him, and I heard plenty of gunshots. I wonder what happened, what changed.
Well, let me read what you say in your preface.
Oh, and just to stop that, I'm sure there was a lot of knives, stabbings, bats and chains being used, because I did see the movie Warriors, and I don't think they used guns there. They had a lot of chains, bats, makeshift weapons, you know?
You say, let me state here, and now that these essays do not mean, 1, all Southern whites were or are rednecks; 2, all black Americans today or in the past were or are black rednecks. One cannot predict, you write, much less forestall all the clever misinterpretations that others might put on one's words. The most that can be done is to alert honest people to the problem. Black rednecks, who are they?
These would be blacks who came out of the Southern culture and who carried that culture with them north into the urban ghettos and into the ghettos of the South for that matter. And who have not moved out of that culture since. Over the years, both blacks and whites have moved away from that culture. But in the poorest and worst of the ghetto areas, there are lots of people who have not. And these kinds of, it's a culture which didn't do whites any good.
So it looks to me as if like the powers that be know how to manipulate the situation with what's going on. It's all about wording. Pay attention to wording, yo. They could play with these words. You know they say words are spells. I hope you do know that.
And it's certainly not doing blacks any good today. And the tragedy is that people regard this culture as somehow the authentic black culture, and therefore you're not to interfere with it.
I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far.
Why is she talking like that?
From where I started from.
Hey, she's proving Thomas' point.
Black English is considered not quite proper English. On the other hand, if blacks happen to have all the power and own all the corporations and whites were working for them, it would be the other way around.
There was a period, I'm trying to remember now, I believe it was in the mid-70s, when substandard English began to become viewed as a discipline of its own within linguistic studies and so forth. And for all I know, it was all perfectly legitimate that certain speech patterns would be traced back to various regions in Africa and so forth. And this is a language of its own. It has its own validity. But the argument, your argument would be, I don't really care what its validity is.
Facts, yo. It's not about validity.
It's holding people back. It's preventing them from participating in the wider society. Is that right?
Absolutely. You know,
looking for validation is never the best way out.
Also, none of these things went back to Africa.
Oh, is that so?
No. You can, yes, they did not go back to Africa. If you look at the peace, for example, using the word axe for ask and stuff like that, all of that goes back to the South, and it goes back to the parts of Britain from which white Southerners came. So if you trace the calling hog entrails chitlins, that was in a certain section of Britain.
You see that? Like, they don't teach you this in school, baby.
The section from which whites moved into the South. And they were known as rednecks and crackers in Britain in centuries past, before they ever set foot in the South. So the whole thing is as phony as the $3 bill.
In Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation.
I thought that was made up in the U.S. And I know you did too, right? Let me know if this is your first time hearing this.
By the intelligence expert, IQ scientist James Flynn, that just stopped me cold. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both black and white American soldiers had children with German women. And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. The black kids and the white kids, the same. Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of black soldiers in Germany grew up in a nation with no black subculture, close quote. Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this
No, the expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they had...
There's no gangster rap.
And I wouldn't even call it black culture. I would call it American culture.
That was pervasively available in Germany.
So here's what I'm getting. There is something about black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back?
Yes, because that very same subculture held whites in the South back as well. That in the time, this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various 4 or 5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the subculture that was there, which was a handicap to both.
See this? All this is new to me right now. I'm a little upset.
I could go on for days about the social degeneration, but let me give you just one quick example. When I grew up in Harlem in the 40s and 50s, I never heard a gunshot. Now, I'm sure someone fired a gun somewhere in Harlem, but it was not such a pervasive thing that you had to hear it. You know, I have relatives in Washington. I asked them the same question, people in my generation.
Growing up in Washington, D.C.
Yes, and low-income black neighborhoods. Did you ever hear a gunshot when you were growing up? And the answer was no. I have relatives in North Carolina. I asked the same question. No. And now, you know, people in housing projects especially, they put kids, some of them, to bed in bathtubs so that they won't be hit by stray bullets in the night. Now we take it for granted that there's crimes, tremendous levels of crime and violence.
I don't think you understand what that is to grow up in an environment where you have to be careful after a certain time, where you can't play the windows close because you could get accidentally shot or something wrong just happening. Living in the buildings, the projects, it's no joke, man. I'm telling you, I'm from New York City, so hey, I grew up in Washington Heights. You understand me? It's crazy around over there. And around the time I grew up, hey man, drugs was at an all-time high. It's at an all-time high now, but back then, oh man, I ain't ancient neither, you understand what I mean? But I'm just saying, as a kid growing up, I was aware of my surroundings. I see what was going on. I came from that era where listen, my parents would be walking me to school and we see an entire building getting raided. You see everybody with the guns and the shields. This was almost every morning, constantly, you know? So, hey, a lot of these things are designed too.
In the black community. That was not always the case. In the 20s, it was very common for white celebrities, including George Gershwin and William Faulkner, to go up to Harlem not only for entertainment places, but to go into private homes of people they knew. And Gershwin played Rhapsody in Blue in this home where Walter White lived. Milton Friedman, when he was a graduate student at Columbia, he and the lady he later married would go dancing at the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem. And he said, we had no fear of being mugged or accosted on the street or anything like that.
I've heard you say, Tom, when you were a boy growing up in Harlem yourself, your own neighborhood felt totally safe to you.
Listen, man, I remember growing up, it wasn't safe, you hear me? But at the same time, that put us on survival mode. I grew up on survival mode. Now, I'm learning how to live. I don't want to learn how to survive. Learning how to survive, it would definitely hold you back. You understand what I mean? I know we live in a dog-eat-dog world, but you got to learn how to live. Once you learn how to live, that's when your life gets better. I'm telling you, you should try it.
Not totally safe. I wouldn't exaggerate, but there's nothing resembling today. I did sleep on hot nights. I would sleep out on the fire escape. When I tell people in Harlem that today, they think I'm from another galaxy, But that people slept on the fire escapes in New York and in the public parks in the 30s, all over the city, because it was not a jungle. And you could run through a great number of other things. Children raised without two parents present. That was about 22% in 1960. One generation later, it was 67%.
Fast forward to today, it's probably 100%.
And it's gone up a little since then as well. And now the rate among whites is higher than it was among blacks in 1960.
Right. They don't teach you that nowhere.
I take responsibility.
I take responsibility.
I take responsibility.
For what? What did you do?
Black people are being slaughtered in the streets, killed in their own homes. These are our brothers and sisters.
Our friends, our family. We are done watching them die.
How do you define a white liberal?
Those kinds of people who have the kinds of attitudes that are called liberal in the United States, although the word is misused, those people have created an atmosphere in which these counterproductive cultures are to be celebrated, perpetuated, and the consequences overlooked. It reminds me of a scene in the Blue Max where this general is encouraging this daredevil pilot to do all kinds of wild stunts, you see, knowing that the guy's going to kill himself if he keeps doing this, and therefore the general will be rid of a political problem. Now, I don't think that the white liberals are doing this deliberately, but I think the net results are the same. They are cheering blacks on and doing things that are absolutely self-destructive.
Word.
One of the things I discovered in the research for my book I'm currently working on is that leaders of groups that are lagging in countries around the world almost invariably have counterproductive policies for them. And it makes perfect sense, because insofar as members of lagging groups assimilate into the values and achievements of the larger society, they don't need those leaders.
Yo, you know what's different is that you can tell this man, like, you can hear how intellectual he is just by the words he chooses to speak with. But not only that, you can tell he read a lot and he did a lot of research. He's not just talking how he feels. He's not giving you his opinion. These are facts. You could look them up.
I mean, there's no mystery to me as to why Jesse Jackson says what he does, or Al Sharpton and others, because that benefits them, but it does not benefit the people they lead. And all the incentives are for leaders to lead people into things that don't help the people, but help the leaders.
What you'd create there would be an exception for Dr. King, though, wouldn't there?
Yes, but
one of the things he was different because he was earliest, or what? Why? What's different about it?
It's like insurgent movements in general. When an insurgency starts off, by definition, it has an uphill battle. Now, and you can look at the history of Christianity, for heaven's sake.
That is a fact. That has a very weird history, if you know what I mean.
If you're going to be a Christian in the Roman Empire, before in the first century, you had a lot of grief to go through. Now, but after Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, this is a bonanza, and there's a lot to be done. And so now you will follow policies that are the opposite of what you advocated. You will see that with all kinds of other insurgent movements.
Wow, that's different. I'm telling you, this man right here, we need to protect him at all costs, man. We need more people like this out here. I'm about to start reading some more books. so I can start putting my peoples on, you hear me? Yeah.
Somewhere, watching this interview, there's a young Thomas Sowell. There's an African American who's smart and wants to do something with his life. It seems to me we've already...
Let me bring that back. Pardon that.
And wants to do something with his life. It seems to me we've already got one piece of advice you'd offer to him is stay away from the races industry. Stay away from the what advice race hustlers.
There's a lot of race hustlers out here in this world. I'm telling you. Once something happens, they're gonna hustle that race up, baby, and get your emotions riled up.
What advice would you give a young Thomas Sowell? How do you make something of yourself as an African American in America today?
The way anybody else would. You equip yourself with skills that people are willing to pay for.
How simple is that? You know, you find a problem, you give people the solution. Obviously, what they're doing with us is they creating a problem and forcing a solution. Hey, this is weird times we're living in right now. Understand what I mean? Yeah, so look, I will be back with some more Thomas Sowell. You know he be always kicking the truth, and I love the truth, you hear me? Hey, can you handle the truth? I don't think you can. But if you're on my channel, yeah, you definitely can handle the truth, alright? So with that being said, hey, if you like what you saw, leave a comment. Tell me your thoughts on this video. Let me know if this was some education for you or not. Also, let's see what else. Yeah, smash that subscribe button. Hit that like. Definitely hit the notification bell so you can see when I post up some more Thomas. This way you're not left out, alright? See you on the next one. Love.